Kuroyama High School looked the way it always did on a spring morning. Cherry blossoms drifting past the gate, students shuffling in half asleep. Nothing suggested today would be different from the 800 unremarkable days before it. Kenji Sato shuffled through that gate with toast hanging from his mouth, exactly as unremarkable as the school itself. If you ask anyone to describe him, they'd struggle. Average grades, average face, average everything. And he liked it that way. Average people didn't get noticed, and people who didn't get noticed didn't have anything bad happen to them. That had been his entire philosophy of life for 16 years. It was about to stop working immediately. In homeroom, their teacher announced a transfer student, and the door slid open to reveal a girl who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, or possibly in the middle of a hostage negotiation. Dark, sharp eyes, perfect posture, a presence that silenced a room without trying. "Valentina Moretti, please take care of me." The only open seat was beside him, of course. "You're staring," she said, without looking at him. "I was looking at the chalkboard behind your head," he said, in what he'd later call the worst sentence ever spoken by a human being. She almost smiled. Sure. He figured that was the end of it, until lunch, when she found him alone on the roof, scanned the area like she was checking sight lines, and sat down at a precise, measured distance. "You're not going to ask," she said eventually. "Ask what? Where I'm from, why I transferred, whether I'm secretly royalty?" "I figure you'll tell me if you want to," Kenji said, shrugging. "Not really my business." Something flickered across her face. Surprise quickly hidden. Looking back, he'd decide that was the exact moment everything started going wrong. Or right. He could never quite tell. 2 weeks passed. They started walking home together, then eating lunch together daily without ever discussing why. When Kenji finally worked up the nerve to ask her to a movie, it didn't feel like a leap so much as the next obvious step. "Are you asking me on a date, Sato?" she said. If you wanted to, no pressure. Saturday, 2 o'clock. Don't be late." Already walking away, she added, "Wear something you don't mind running in." Running? It's a movie theater. He should have asked more questions.
A black car picked him up Saturday, driven by 2 enormous men in identical suits and sunglasses. Vale's uncles, Marco and Luca, who informed him with total seriousness that the date would be timed for quality assurance. The date itself was genuinely nice, right up until the emergency exit blew open and a dozen men in matching jackets stormed the theater shouting in Italian. Valentina didn't flinch. She flung his popcorn into the nearest attacker's face and swept his legs out in the same motion. "Stay behind me," she said calmly, while Kenji sat frozen under a rain of popcorn. Marco and Luca arrived seconds later and dismantled the rest with the brisk efficiency of men doing minor repairs. 12 seconds, start to finish. 12 minutes into the date, Luca reported. New record. Valentina brushed popcorn off her shoulder, sighing like this happened often, which Kenji was beginning to suspect it did. "Vale, why did a dozen men just storm a theater shouting your name?" For the first time, her composure cracked. She looked tired, a little scared of his reaction. "My father runs a family business. A very old, very large, very Italian family business." It clicked. "You're a Mafia princess?" Valentina crossed her arms, bracing herself. "So, are you going to run?" Kenji thought about it for a full 2 seconds. Then he looked at her, really looked, past the chaos and the popcorn in her hair, and something in him settled. "Does this mean I get a bodyguard discount, or—" She stared, then burst out laughing, loud and real, the toughest version of herself disappearing entirely. "You're insane. I prefer average with poor judgment." That night, walking home, a black car pulled up silently beside him. Marco rolled down the window. "Get in. The Don wants to meet you." "Now?" "Now."
The Moretti estate was less a house than a fortress dressed up as a villa. High walls, manicured hedges, trimmed into shapes that looked suspiciously like they could double as cover from gunfire. Kenji was walked through 3 separate sets of doors, past men who looked like they'd been carved out of granite, into a dining room where a single man sat at the head of an absurdly long table. Don Salvatore Moretti was not what Kenji expected. He wasn't hulking or scarred or theatrically menacing. He looked like somebody's elegant, silver-haired grandfather, until he looked up and Kenji understood immediately why a man could run an empire with nothing but that stare. "Sit," Salvatore said. Kenji sat. Vale stood near the wall, arms crossed, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. "You're the boy my daughter has been sneaking around with?" Salvatore said. "Tell me why I shouldn't have my men walk you home tonight and lose you somewhere scenic." Vale warned him. "I'm asking him, not you." Kenji's mouth was dry. Every instinct told him to lie, to flatter, to grovel, but lying to this man felt like the single most dangerous thing he could possibly do. So instead, he just told the truth. "I don't have a good reason," Kenji said. "I'm not rich, I'm not impressive, I nearly threw up during the gunfight at the movie theater. The only thing I've got going for me is that your daughter laughed for the first time in 2 weeks because of something stupid I said, and I'd like to keep doing that, if it's allowed." Silence. Vale stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Salvatore set down his fork. Then slowly, the old man laughed, a real booming laugh that startled the guards lining the walls. "Marco told me you survived an ambush by throwing popcorn." He shook his head. "Either you are the luckiest boy in Japan, or God himself finds you amusing. Possibly both. Eat. We'll discuss terms after dinner." "What terms?" Kenji whispered. "You don't want to know," she whispered back. "Just say yes to whatever he asks." The terms, it turned out, were absurd and non-negotiable. Kenji would be permitted to date Valentina under the following conditions. He would attend a minimum of 1 family dinner per week. He would never lie to Vale or to Salvatore. The two were apparently treated as the same offense. And he would accept that the uncles would be present for every date for the foreseeable future, which is to say, forever.
Kenji agreed to all of it on the spot, mostly out of sheer terror, partly because he genuinely didn't mind. What followed was, by any reasonable definition, the strangest few months of Kenji's life. His mother, blissfully unaware of any of this, became convinced that Vale's family ran a lovely little restaurant based entirely on the extravagant homemade meals Vale's housekeeper occasionally sent over. She kept trying to arrange a recipe exchange. Kenji deflected this with increasing creativity each week. Meanwhile, every milestone of a normal teenage relationship got hijacked by Mafia logistics. Their first attempt at a quiet study date was interrupted when a rival family attempted a kidnapping via the school's chemistry lab window. Vale handled it by throwing a Bunsen burner with the precision of a discus thrower while Kenji hid under a desk, the uncles arriving moments later to tidy up, which apparently meant zip-tying 2 would-be kidnappers to the bike racks. Kenji slowly discovered that almost everyone in Vale's orbit had some absurd specific skill set disguised as a mundane job. The family's elderly cook, who Kenji had assumed baked bread, turned out to be a former demolitions expert who'd retired into pastry. The piano teacher who came twice a week to give Vale lessons was, by Vale's own deadpan admission, mostly there to check the security cameras. And strangely, impossibly, Kenji kept surviving things that should have killed him. Not through any skill of his own, but through a kind of magnetic idiot luck. He ducked at exactly the wrong moment during a drive-by and ended up dodging a bullet meant for someone else entirely. He wandered into the middle of a tense negotiation between Salvatore and a rival boss, completely lost looking for a bathroom, and somehow defused the tension by offering both men a stick of gum because he didn't understand what he'd walked into and panicked. This, more than anything, convinced Salvatore that Kenji was either the luckiest fool alive or, his actual working theory for several weeks, a deep-cover assassin so good he'd convinced even himself of his own incompetence. He had Kenji quietly investigated 3 separate times. Each report came back the same: average student, average grades, terrible at sports, allergic to shellfish, no known skills of any kind. Salvatore eventually gave up trying to find an explanation and simply decided to enjoy the chaos. "You are either going to get my daughter killed," he told Kenji over dinner one night, with what Kenji had learned to recognize as fondness, "or you are going to live to be 90 purely out of spite from the universe. I look forward to finding out which." Vale, for her part, slowly came undone in the best possible way. The girl who'd walked into homeroom like she was casing the exits started smiling more, really smiling, not the careful, controlled version she'd perfected for years. She still disarmed strangers without blinking and still kept 3 different escape routes mapped out of every room she entered, but around Kenji, something in her finally relaxed.
"You're the first person who's never once asked me to be normal," she told him one evening. "Everyone either wants me to be the Mafia princess or pretends I'm not and acts terrified the whole time. You just let me be both." "I mean, you did throw a Bunsen burner at a kidnapper like a discus," Kenji said. "Pretending that's not happening would be a lot of effort." She laughed, the real laugh, the one he'd come to think of as his, and leaned her head on his shoulder. For a moment, with the uncles a respectful 20 feet away pretending to read newspapers, it almost felt like an ordinary teenage romance. Almost. The closest thing to a real crisis came near the end of the school year, when a rival family, the Conti, longtime enemies of the Morettis, decided that kidnapping Vale and forcing a merger through marriage to their own son was a viable business strategy. They struck during the school's spring festival, in broad daylight, betting the chaos of crowds and stalls would cover their escape. It almost worked. 2 Conti men grabbed Vale near the goldfish scooping booth and had her halfway into a van before Kenji, who'd gone to buy her a candy apple and returned to find her missing, did something that surprised absolutely everyone, including himself. He didn't think. He just ran, full speed, tackling the nearest kidnapper into a stack of festival stalls with all the grace of a man who had never played a contact sport in his life, buying exactly enough time for Vale to drive her elbow into the second man's throat and break free. It wasn't skill. It wasn't training. It was, as Marco later put it while bandaging Kenji's badly sprained wrist, the single dumbest act of bravery I have witnessed in 11 years of organized crime, and also somehow effective. Salvatore arrived 8 minutes later with what Kenji could only describe as a small army, and the matter of the Conti family was handled. Vale was deliberately vague about what that meant, and Kenji decided he preferred it that way. That night, sitting in the Moretti kitchen with an ice pack on his wrist while Vale fussed over him with visible, uncharacteristic worry, Salvatore appeared in the doorway and watched them for a long moment. "You could have been killed," he said to Kenji, not a threat, something closer to genuine concern, which was somehow more unsettling. "Probably," Kenji agreed. "I didn't really think about it." "That's the problem with you," Salvatore said, but he was almost smiling. He looked at his daughter, who was carefully wrapping Kenji's wrist with far more attention than the injury strictly required, and something in his expression softened. "Fine. You've earned your stripes, boy. Welcome to the family. Unofficially and against my better judgment." Vale looked up, startled. "Papa, don't make me say it twice," Salvatore said gruffly, already turning to leave. At the door, he paused. "And Kenji,
Next time, throw something at them first. Tackling is for people with actual muscle mass. You have none. Noted, Kenji said, weakly.
By the time summer rolled around, Kenji's life had become a strange, comfortable kind of chaos. His mother had finally gotten her recipe exchange. Vale's cook taught her how to make proper carbonara and remained blissfully convinced it was simply a friendly gesture between families. The uncles had stopped timing dates entirely, mostly because Kenji had become a fixture rather than a security risk, though they still hovered at a respectful distance out of habit more than necessity. Sitting on the rooftop one last time before summer break, Vale leaned against him, watching the sunset paint the sky orange. "So," Kenji said, "average grades, average face, dating the most dangerous girl in the country. How'd I end up here?" "Bad luck," Vale said. "Or good luck. I still haven't decided which."